All right, so Dr. Fletcher's getting a little better at these Instagram lives, but I'm super excited for tonight because, well, it's afternoon Pacific time and East Coast Standard Time. It's around 5:30, and I am just so excited because tonight we're going to have an authentic conversation between two licensed clinical professionals that are out and open about their dissociative experiences. And so Dr. Jamie Marich will be joining me here in just a little moment. And I noticed even in getting ready for this live that I was super nervous about it. It's like, am I Dr. Fletch? Am I Adrian and all her parts? And so I had my doctor glasses out, and I just need to be Adrian today because it's Friday, and usually the parts gets lots of special time on Friday. So I couldn't be more honored than to bring Dr. Marich on, who just wrote a book called Dissociation Made Simple. I highly recommend it for the clinical community and for those living with DID. She really breaks things down, and she's authentic. And I really have to thank Dr. Jamie because she was one of the very first therapists, actually I think the first therapist ever, who talked openly at a conference about her lived experience. And today we're going to have just an authentic, heartfelt conversation about what it means to break down this narrative around shame. And we'll weigh in on the recent McLean situation that has happened, because I don't know about any of you, but I certainly know that it has left a massive ripple effect and a lot of emotions, and it's Friday. So hopefully Dr. Jamie and I can bring some light, love, and positive energy to the table while also having a very difficult conversation. So as here we go, have Dr. Jamie join, I am just so honored to have this conversation, and we're going to have some fun tonight. See where she just went. I just hit accepted. There she comes.
What?
There you are.
Oh, it says we're connecting.
Yay.
And we have our matching purple headwear on, which excites me.
Yes. You know, when I went back and forth, it's like I need the glasses, but I was wearing a ball cap today. And I'm like, you know what? And this is what we talk about, right? How we feel this overwhelming pressure to stay in this box of doctor and what that really looks like.
Right.
And I've certainly learned a lot from you about how to do that differently. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I know, you know, we talked earlier today, sort of. I just want to be transparent with the community, as I always am, about what I really needed from you to bring your presence to the table. And you and I are both very passionate people, and we show up with our passion differently. And you were super respectful of, you know, my light and love stuff that I like to bring. And I also want to validate that I understand the passion from your stance, and you don't need to change anything about that in order to be here with me tonight. It's just, we just do things a little bit differently, but I think that's what's so great about our community is that we welcome that.
Yeah. And, you know, we have a lot of light and love parts. We have a lot of parts that are very angry by all of this. Mm-hmm. And I think we know, and we want to share with our community, it's important to honor whatever is coming up for you in your parts.
Yeah.
As it relates to this situation, as it relates to any situation that you might find triggering, especially as it relates to who you are as a person.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, where should we get started? I mean, you know, my biggest hope is that we can sort of bridge some kind of bridge to, you know, where we're not feeling heard, right? And I don't know that we necessarily have all the answers on how to do that, but I do think we, like you said earlier, have this authentic conversation around shame, because I know for me personally, it's taken a very long time to get to a place of not living with shame around this. And so to have comments be made about that it must look, you know, you must be in shame or you would never come out with your experiences, does not sit well with me at all.
Right.
Because I'm so out loud and proud now, and I want to be unapologetic about it, and it's still very scary. And I know there's other professionals like us wanting to explore this path of disclosure and being out loud and proud about all the things. And yeah, we have to change the narrative, and hopefully you and I can start doing that for folks. I know you've been working at this for a long time. You've certainly been an inspiration to me. So dive in, girl.
Yeah, shame. So shame has been something we've worked with as a system for quite some time. Even, and I wouldn't say even before we came out as a professional with a dissociative disorder, shame as somebody in long-term addiction recovery, which I am now almost 21 years, you learn to work with shame in the early days of recovery in most recovery programs. And I was blessed in my graduate training to have an amazing professor named Jerry Carter, who's now deceased. And he read us this beautiful John Bradshaw poem in our training called My Name is Shame, where it took on the personification of shame. And yet the ultimate thesis of the poem was, in learning to love the things that I was ashamed of, I'm now free. And
huge.
So I've looked at shame professionally, personally, in many different layers and many different expressions of my recovery for a while now. And in all of that, my favorite definition, which I might want to take a dance with you at some point here, is shame is the lie that someone told you about yourself.
Ooh.
And that's,
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, that's right. That's from Anais Nin, who was a French-Cuban writer, bisexual woman. Shame is the lie that someone told you about yourself. And I say in my clinical trainings that shame is when we believe these lies people have told us about ourselves. And, you know, as clinical professionals, we are empowered to help people start seeing a new truth about themselves. And ultimately, it's up to us to embrace those new truths about ourselves. Yet, all of that being said, that is what upset us the most, not just with the McLean video, but with just some other areas of discourse in our field as well, that people with DID or OSDD naturally have a high degree of shame. And almost this association that it's a diagnostic criteria. And like, that's the thing that's made us squirm the most with a lot of this discourse this week. I don't know how your feelings been about that.
Yeah. You know, I would agree with that. And again, you know, you get me off on a tangent about diagnostic criteria. I said in the keynote at An Infinite Mind that somebody needs to call us to write the new criteria for the DSM-6, because I just have had enough. But yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things that were inaccurately portrayed in the McLean Grand Round video, as well as historically, and you have a little bit more knowledge and experience with all of that. That's the stuff that's going on behind the scenes for a long time now. And I just think it's outlandish to suggest that all right, when anytime we're making a generalization statement about all people must be experiencing shame, I think, you know, shame is a very individualized and intricate process for every human, regardless of any diagnosis whatsoever. And it's in no one's right to make blanket statements, generalized statements about what that would look like.
Exactly. And here's, because I've done a lot of reflecting this week on shame. All of us have done a lot of reflecting this week on shame. And it's like, yes, we have had some shame and guilt over things we've done. I believe as part of recovery, we've addressed those and continue to address them that come up. We have internalized a lot of shame, for sure, because I think when we hear, especially from people who should know better, that you should be feeling a certain way, it could become easy to turn that inward. And quite frankly, we do have a lot of shame in our profession. It's not personal shame that we're owning as ours, because we really try to make a difference and do it differently. Yet when I saw what happened, my immediate impulse was, and I've done this a little bit on social media, and I really feel I want to do it here, is to apologize on behalf of my profession. I mean, I know I'm not the representative of my whole profession, but for the person who is out here right now, I feel a lot of pain for what's happening in my profession and what has happened in my profession. And I just want to send a heartfelt big group hug to anybody, especially anybody anywhere, but especially in our communities, right, who've been hurt by our professions.
I would agree. I feel the same. You know, I was telling Annalyn McCord the other day that on our experience, you know, I was feeling a great deal of embarrassment to be a part and associated with the mental health field right now. Same as, like, I understand that we do not represent all of the mental health field, but at the same time, I do feel this ethical responsibility to apologize on behalf of the profession. And I realize, and really just talking with you right now, it really isn't we're like taking on the shame, right? And it's so,
we're good at that, right?
We're really great at that. And, you know, but again, I too, my heart is just with so many, you know, it's with you, it's with my own system, it's with the entire DID community. And I'm really just heartbroken and disappointed, because this is an entity that has been respected for their research, and it is a place I've trusted to send people to go for inpatient treatment. And it's just disheartening that it's coming from there. And I understand that people make mistakes. I do. I really do. I've made them. You know, and mistakes are hard. And I think in our profession, we're not taught like, hey, you're going to make mistakes along the way, and that's okay. We're going to, you know, by owning your mistakes and learning from them, we can do things differently. And, yeah, and I said this the other day on the live, I have not fully wrapped my mind around everything yet. I was going to spend some meditative time this weekend to get quiet before I write my own statement. But yeah, the internalized shame, our own, isn't there, you would know more than I would in terms of the vocabulary around, there's a special term for that, internalized stigma.
It's, I mean, a lot of it is just internalized, whatever it may be, stigma, homophobia, whatever. And I know a thing I want to test out with you.
Oh boy.
A few weeks ago, somebody on one of my social media pages lovingly called me out, because I was talking about end the stigma, end the stigma, end the stigma. And they said, stigma is actually a really nice word. It's really discrimination, if you think about it. And somebody's saying here in the comments, like self-hate, it's that hatred turn inward.
Yeah.
And that's really a lot of what toxic shame can be. Yet, you know, to your point about, yeah, I think what hurt so much, like this would have hurt enough if it was a dissociation denier that was up there doing that. Because we know there's plenty of those in our profession to say that the disease, you know, the disorder, whatever the condition isn't real. Yet, yes, McLean has traditionally been established as an ally, and you know, Dr. Robertson and others connected have been involved in a major professional organization that has done a lot of good for our profession, or for our people, and validating our legitimacy. Yet I think this hurts for us more when it comes from people who say they're our allies. And I mean, you know, a lot of the fire I have felt lately is, yeah, it's time to start holding allies accountable, which I do in a lot of my work. Yet, you know, here, like you said, we really want to just speak to our community about, you know, shame. It's disclosure. There's like, you know, 4 or 5 messages coming through here from the different folks. Like, shame is just, that's not who we are.
Right.
It's not who we are, and it breaks our heart that others still see us that way. But I don't think that's our fault that others see us that way. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I think this is it. There's like, when I think generational trauma, let's just talk generational trauma of this label of dissociation and DID, right? Years, decades before I was even on the planet, where, you know, and it's so disheartening is really just the word that just keeps coming to me, and heartbreaking, because, you know, when things like this happen, I feel like it went from like a sense of safety, maybe, you know, in terms of that connection or that entity, right, to unsafe, like immediately, like overnight, literally overnight, right? And it's like, now what do we do? Because, okay, you're one person, I'm one person, we have this entire beautiful DID community. Where does the change actually happen? Because as we're starting to create change, until they come to the table with accountability and validation and understanding, right, to really hear where we're coming from, it's like shut the door. And I can't say I get out of all or nothing thinking, right? But it's really sent a sense of, shutting the door on people that may be thinking about disclosure for themselves, being happy about getting to a place of living with whatever it is, functional multiplicity, embracing all parts and alters, right? And that's what really concerns me.
Yeah.
You know, especially because you and I are dysregulated about this situation. There's no question about that. You've owned that. I've owned that. And we know that there's a lot of people out there that don't have the same resources, the same toolboxes, or the same experiences to help all of those parts. So not only did, you know, the part that may present itself, right? We have all of these people living with all of these different parts who are, you know, and it's, you know, Annalyn McCord and I were talking about, she brought this to my attention about a bunch of inner kids now triggered and feeling unsafe, right? And so, you know, I think there's a lack of ability to take account in the trauma piece here. This is traumatizing for our community, and we can't alone, the two of us, you know, pick up the pieces. You know, we really need some accountability here. And I'm sort of, I don't know if I'm naive and waiting for that, but I also would like propose solutions as how to move forward with the community from them.
I think we should end there, because that's, you know, a good place to kind of bring this back to, like, where next, like what are solutions?
Absolutely.
Where I do want to go with you, I want to make sure you and I talk about this, because I see a lot of our friends are here who support us both in the comments, and love you, see y'all. You know, this is wonderful. I think it surprises people just how hard it is to be out as a professional with dissociative identities.
So hard
in this field. So hard. And I've said this many times that, you know, we don't have a prayer of solving this issue in society unless we saw, you know, about stigma and discrimination, unless we solve it in the field first. And here was my experience, because I remember, you know a little my story, but just to recap, like, diagnosed in 2004, licensed in 2005, went through the PhD, became a professional trainer, you know, all of this. And I started like dipping my toes out about 2011. And I remember how I dipped my toe out was in one of my books I wrote, I have complex PTSD and I struggle with a lot of dissociation. And then as I kind of felt safe with certain audiences, I would share more and more. And then it was around that time, like, you know, circa 2013, 2014, where I went to one of my first big professional conferences with a focus on dissociation. And I thought like everybody there was going to be out. And I went in kind of like, ooh, I'm going to meet like-minded folks. It was like, no, like, we don't talk about personal stuff here. And it was hard. Like it shoved me back into the closet, and it made me wonder, am I missing something here? Like, am I?
Well, it's really crazy. It's crazy making when you live with a dissociative disorder and you want to be out about it, because in my experience, and I had a conversation with somebody else today who does not live with DID, you know, just about how it wasn't until I fully was able to come out that I felt like I could finally be free to be me for the first time ever in my life. And I'm going to be 42 years old in August.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, sister.
You know, and it's like, wait a second here. I'm working in the field of psychology, but yet I can't talk about how I've had traumatic experiences. I can't talk, right? This is what we're like, it's indoctrinated in us, you know, it's like blank slate, you know, get out your clipboard. And to be fair, that was me as I started residency. That is exactly the Dr. Fletcher that I was a blank slate. Don't share, self-disclosure too much. You got to be careful, all the things, right? And I understand we have ethics and boundaries. I'm not arguing about ethics and boundaries, but what I'm arguing about is our own field sends the message that it's not okay to talk about having trauma, PTSD, OSDD, DID. I do not understand. Like, it has never, it still has not computed.
It is crazy making to me. And, you know, to be clear, I know you and I both know this. Of course, we always have a part that can help us front, you know, with that.
100%.
Professional. Anyway. And I think part of like my shift and really starting to see what was wrong was, you know, before my fullest coming out, it's about a year before, when I was about maybe half the way out, I was speaking with a member of I'm not going to name names, but like a well-known person in the field of dissociation. As soon as I started like telling her a little bit about my story, she just got so uncomfortable, like so uncomfortable. And that's when I realized, like, what is this? And at a later point when I asked her about it, her answer to me, and so I've taken this into consideration as I've looked at this whole bigger problem, is there's already so much denial about dissociation.
Totally.
That people are not going to take us seriously as a field of study if we make it all phenomenological and all lived experience. Like, we have to be able to have the science and the this and the that and the that. And I'm like, great. And I'm grateful to those of you who do all of that. And those of us who have lived experience, or those of us can do both, really do need to be listened to. So I don't know. And my, my turning point moment, and I'm curious, like, to hear a little bit more, because I know your story, but like what your turning points were. But I think for both of us, it's a gradual evolution, right? But my turning point,
I feel like there's always a new turning point.
Right. Like, we're always coming at it, right?
Yeah, I know, but I feel like that's true. The disclosure process itself is so much. It's not just like coming out and saying, I have this. It's so many different layers and disclosures about all kinds of things. And it's still terrifying. I've been out since October of 2021, which is not that long, but it's still terrifying. I would be lying to say that I wake up like without no terror sometimes. Like, that's not true. Like, it's scary to still be out. And it's just a lot, And
I've learned this as a queer person, and support from my queer friends. Like, you're always coming out on some level, like in new groups and new, all of that. But, I know my turning point moment when I wrote the article, when that was 2018, my official coming out was early 2018. And I remember even before I did that, I shared the draft of the article with my small team of faculty members who works in my EMDR training program. And I just said to all of them, like, do any of you have problems with this? Because this may come back on all of you if people don't like this. And I got nothing but love and support from them, which was all that mattered to me. And as I share in Dissociation Made Simple, my big impetus was that my ex-husband threatened and did use a self-injury episode I had during one of my dissociative meltdowns against me. And when it happened, both of my therapists at the time, love them both, just so clearly said, and he's the one who looks like the ass for doing it. Sorry. We just, that's just, but that was important to us, because what it shifted for us is, if you're going to criticize me for being out, what does that say about you and your belief in this field and the work that we do? Because aren't we about, and I know your beautiful psychiatric services journal piece that you wrote, your firsthand, something multi-layered, yes. Something I always take from that is, and I'm paraphrasing you here, we promote this in our clients, right? To be able to ask for help and be vulnerable, yet we feel like we can't do it ourselves. That's just not right.
Correct.
Not right.
So correct. And, when I've come across people that are new into their training and they're absolutely terrified to talk to a supervisor about anything. I'm so blessed that the supervisor I had for my postdoctoral residency fostered owning all the things, because he was like, the healthiest therapists are really the ones who can embrace their stuff, work through it so it doesn't show up in the room. And like, but I know I'm a rarity in having that experience of just really encouraging therapists to really work on themselves, not be ashamed of things that they're dealing with, because the global entity of the field of mental health sends all the messages of, it's the opposite of what we're trying to do, right? We want our clients to be happy and healthy and own all of who they are, regardless of the diagnosis, and speak their truth and do all these things. But yet our profession is asking us to remain silent. And it's very subtle, some of it, right? And some of it's overt. So some is subtle and covert, and some of it's very overt. And I shared this at my keynote. It's not a surprise to, as people watch me shift in my career, it's really hard for me to be in the mental health field right now, because I don't for myself know what that means right now.
Me too.
I don't.
I do.
Yeah.
I, I've had several uncomfortable exchanges with people who've known me a long time, especially in the continuing education part of this industry, where it's like, I don't know if I could do this anymore. At least with the way the field is now. Yet, even as I say that, I get that pull of, and more people like us are needed, at least in mental health advocacy spaces. So
it's a hard thing, right? Because it's like, we want to help and we want to serve, and we also want to embrace all of us while we do that. And it's like feeling like you're up against something that you won't ever win. And I don't mean like win, like we have to conquer, but it's constant. Yes. And I'm tired. And I mean, I'm tired this week. Obviously, the McLean thing threw us all for a loop. It's been a lot to process. Like I said, I still haven't fully wrapped my whole mind around it. But just in general, it's just, I deserve, you deserve, we all deserve to be healthy and happy. And there is an element, and that's why I do like to bring a lot of light and love and rainbows and butterflies, because there's a lot of darkness in the field, and it's so disheartening. And so anything I can do to, bring the light and be the inspiration, is what I'm trying to do, so that more people do feel safe to come forward, so that they can also brave the way and do all of that. But it sometimes feels hard, and it feels defeating at times, and yet we both keep going and we keep trying, and
for sure,
because we have a lot of passion and a lot of love for the community, and I know you do too. I know you want people to be safe, feel safe enough to come out for their own life and space, right? But we definitely need a lot of things to be different.
Misty's chiming in here, my cat.
Great.
You might see her on the screen here in a bit.
All animals are welcome.
All animals. One other part of this, I think we've been touching on it, yet I directly want to name it, is, for me, the more, and I agree, like with Brene Brown's fundamental teaching, that vulnerability does need to come with boundaries. Like, we need to know in what spaces we are safe to share things. Yet, fundamentally, this idea of not hiding who I am and not trying to keep anything in a container or a box, I have felt better in my mental symptoms in my life. The more that I have lived loudly and proudly, the more that I have not tried to pretend. Because I know, and this is getting into some of the technical weeds of our dissociation studies, but even a lot of the well-known approaches for working with dissociation will say things like, well, don't talk to the parts, don't indulge the dissociation, don't highlight it, don't make a big deal about it, etc., etc. And I admit, Adrienne, a lot of our first years of living as a professional with a dissociative disorder, that was us. Like, okay, let's just not focus on it too much. But we know that anything we put away in a closet is going to keep knocking on the door, right? Until we pay attention to it. And the more, and I remember in 2016, right, when we had the huge meltdown that got us into the care we needed again, and that was a big impetus in the coming out. We noticed during that experience how much we were using we pronouns, right? And then as we even reflected on it, it's like, yeah, you've been doing that a lot in the last year, but you did that all the time when you were a kid. And at some point along the way, you really kept it in check. So you better keep it in check again. And then it's like, why the hell am I keeping it in check? That's really for everybody else's comfort. Or so I'm judged. But you know, we vacillate now between I and we, however it feels, whatever context. And it was just a huge lesson to me. And it just pains me that that's what so many people are teaching. When I think a lot of us have learned by honoring our system and talking to our parts and living with them and not being ashamed of them. That's how we get better.
Yes. Because when the parts feel seen, heard, validated, loved, and they learn new skills and new boundaries and all kinds of things, what do you know? The human being who's carrying all those parts gets better. Like, that is not rocket science. It's my lived experience. That, I mean, I can speak to that, and it really saddens me. And I do love the therapists who are just absolutely really want to learn, and they're like, you know, when they say like another part showed up and they, you know, did the art with them and like really got, you know, like that is just so profoundly beautiful.
Right.
I'm like, thank you for acknowledging that person's parts because they showed up and they wanted to speak to you. That's huge. It's so huge. And I'm sorry, I'm not a PhD. I don't do research.
Yeah.
I don't need research to tell me that when my parts feel seen, heard, and validated, I feel better. Right. Sorry. Yeah. Done. Check.
Yes. And
you know?
Clinically, I think the greatest intervention I could provide folks like us is validation.
Yeah.
That I believe you, that I see you, that I'm not trying to change you. Yeah, there may be some behaviors and interactions that we want to work on, yet
absolutely
who you fundamentally are is beautiful. And I don't know, maybe that did come a little easier for me because that was how I had to get sober. That was how I had to embrace being queer in a conservative family, is realizing like how being proud of who I am, who we are, it's the alternative, although we can live with it, is not a very fulfilling life for us.
Yeah. You know, I think there's been a lot of so many misunderstandings and misconceptions about what it means to be a clinical trauma therapist and how to show up for folks living with dissociative experiences. And I'm sometimes left speechless because all I can say is, listen, I've lived it and I've treated it, and I'm not perfect. I definitely have missed it because in graduate school, you get a paragraph and then you're told, but you probably won't ever see it in your office. You're never going to see it. And, you know, it's so, you know, it's like so rare. And I'm just like, at the same time. Okay. And, you know, it's really, we know it's underdiagnosed, it's missed. And I don't fault the therapists who miss it. I've missed it. You know, it's so systemic. It's so, I don't know, I could go on. And I just want people living with it to know, like, you don't have to be ashamed of having dissociative experiences. You know, dissociation, as you talk about, you made it simple in your book. It happens to everyone and it's a spectrum. And it's nothing to be afraid of. And it really is so brilliant in how it's kept the entire human intact, if you will, like in terms of survival, right? And, you know, when you start doing these things, like having one way of looking at it, one way of treating it, it's very harmful, really. I mean, that's just what it is, because you're not leaving the roominess for the growth and the magic and the things that can happen, you know, in between. And you're, you know, shutting the system down, shutting parts down. You know, when parts come up, if they're not acknowledged and they're shut down, or they're made to feel shame, or the person living with the condition is made to feel shame that this occurred or this happened, you know, it's a perpetual cycle. And shame is dangerous. It's very, very, very dangerous. At the end of the day, like, that is my stance on shame. It is dangerous.
Yep. So 2 things I want to make sure we talk about.
What's interesting? I was like, I'm going to be all calm, and then look at me, I'm all energized. I'm like, 17's in the background, like, what else we have to say?
Yeah, go for it. So I think 2 things as we look at solution, because I'm all about ranting, and you know, Nine loves to rant and get angry, and yet, you know, what I want my rants to do is bring us to then a place of, so what do we do with them? Like, what's the solution? And sometimes I rant, like, I don't know what the solution is, but there are 2 key solutions here I think we can talk about. One is, you know, Dr. Adrienne, what advice would you give to a clinical professional? And yes, every profession has their own unique culture. Like, certainly would even
see. Let me pause you for a second, because even with that question, do you know what I feel called to do?
What?
Give 9,000 disclaimers about how I can't give advice.
Yeah. Maybe let's take the word advice out. Because in 12 steps we say, like, what experience, strength, and hope would you share to somebody in the clinical professions? Because I was saying, like, I wouldn't even know how to begin to talk to, like, a doctor, a lawyer, a police officer, a medical doctor, that is, because I don't know those professional cultures. And I know they may have more risk than we do. But for clinical professionals, psychologists, social workers, etc., Because I really do believe, and I've long been fueled by Harvey Milk, the great LGBTQ first gay mayor of San Francisco advocate, who said, we have to come out. People have to see us. And even a lot of his peers pushed back against him as being a little militant about that. Like, not everybody's safe to come out. So yes, we get your point that more of us need to come out to really make a change, but let's talk about how to do it. Let's not just force people out of the closet who may not be. So, I do believe more of us need to come out, and I also want to be sensitive to that people's own processes. So what experience, strength, and hope might you share?
Yeah, well, one, I think disclosure of any kind is such a unique process for every person, given what they're dealing with in their life, from dealing with friends, family, their profession, and all of the things. When it comes to being a clinical trauma professional, for me, you asked me earlier, what was a turning point? And I had gotten to this place of feeling incongruent. Here I now knew for sure, right? Because even, right, you're in and out of like, do I have it? Do I not have it? It's the whole thing. That should be a criteria. Please, somebody call me. Waiting for that call. But, a turning point for me was like, I can remember sitting in my office and I was sitting with a client and I had this visceral reaction. This person had been experiencing some shame about dissociation. And I was sitting in my office and I had this visceral reaction, and just internally I was like, I can't do this anymore. I didn't say it out loud. I just had this moment and I reflected upon it later. And it was this moment of incongruence. Who am I as a licensed psychologist to sit as a certified EMDR therapist, approved EMDR consultant, to sit here and think I am helping people navigate their own journey and helping them work through their own shame. And here I am closeted with this huge story and an experience of living with dissociative identity disorder. If I don't do something about this for my own being, I don't know what's going to happen to me. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. That was a huge turning point. And so for me, what I really learned was, and I knew in that moment, it wasn't like I was going to, get on social media and be like, I have DID. It was like, holy cow, wait a second here. And it was a long process of consulting with peers who had already walked the path.
Yes.
It was calling Olga Trujillo, who's a lawyer who lives with DID, saying, I am terrified and I want to do this. What do I need to know? Right. And so, but the disclosure really started slowly, right? It's obviously in therapy first, husband, close friend. Then after one close friend, it was another close friend. And actually, when I say close friend, it was people relatively new to the journey, but people I felt really connected to, all the way up to consulting with, first I actually came to the conference in Infinite Mind. You were there speaking about your dissociative experiences, with helped me. It was the year Jamie Pollock spoke, the founder of Infinite Mind, spoke her story. And then I was like, okay, there's a path here. I just need to take it one step at a time until, being able to fully come forward. But it was really the sense of like, I can't be incongruent. Like I'm so, especially my hope would be is that people see me as so authentic as I possibly can be, right? Again, with limits, boundaries, and all of the things. But my biggest piece of feedback is you will know for you, because I don't think anybody should feel pressure. So I'm in agreement. Like, yes, I agree. We need more people braving the way, coming out, speaking about their experiences. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think because it can be so dysregulating and so overwhelming, to understand that disclosure is a process, and to have supports in place, first and foremost, to check in with all parts to make sure that that is the decision. And then to ask yourself why, what's the motivation? What are you hoping to gain from that? And then putting some things in place as you slowly navigate the coming out process, and surely making sure you're emotionally safe, physically safe, because all parts need to feel safe before that happens. And then thinking about the way in which you hope to deliver your coming out, whatever that looks like. And I think it looks different for all of us.
Agreed.
Right? And it's such a sacred process. And it's no one's right for any one of us to say how it should look, right? Because it looks so different for all of us. And each person that decides to come forward has to be okay with their decision. Because at the end of the day, it's the life that they're living. And I think my hope would be too, is to also recognize, and I know not everybody, when we have to gain our like clinical supervision hours and all the things, right? There are some people that want to come out and are just in a space where they feel like whatever it is, they might have to feel like they want to get their hours and at least reach the licensure standpoint before doing it, or whatever it is. Everybody's got their things, but to be in an environment that hopefully would support it. And if not, evaluating that piece, because that would be really challenging to make that decision if there's no support system in place, right? So I think,
yes,
I think to sum it up, it's checking in with all parts first, being patient with self and system, right? And then doing consultation, reaching out to people who have already done it, and then deciding what is the motivation, why, and why is it important? Like really almost like your own mission statement in your heart as to why this is so important, before taking that leap. Because I'm sure you can speak to it, but you know, although I feel so blessed and honored, and it's been a beautiful journey, it has certainly not been an easy one. And no matter how much support you have, you can feel like you're on an island because it's your life, right? Nobody knows what will happen when you come forward. It's a risk. And I think there are pros and there are cons, and you have to really evaluate the risk to yourself and your life before taking those action steps. Like somebody had mentioned at the conference during the keynote, like, don't just like come out, you know, impulsively and then lose your job and then you can't take care of yourself, that kind of stuff. So I think if there's a mindfulness, you know, you're all about grounding, mindfulness in that, right? Just getting clear on the reason and putting some parameters in place to foster it to go well. Because when it doesn't and you're rejected, because it's not like everybody loves the two of us for being out and open, you know what I mean?
I know, we know what you mean.
So you have to be willing to say, like, you know, using your voice is not always easy, and you have to be willing to stand in your own truth and trust your own process. So I don't know, that was a long answer to your question, but.
Well, what I want to pick up on in your answer to reflect on, because yes, it's a process. As I shared, it was really a 14-year gradual evolution for me. Sure. From diagnosis to being like, here we are. Absolutely nothing to hide. And yeah, I always tell folks, like, test the waters with a small group of professional peers first. I think that's because as I'm thinking on it, I didn't really have a lot of people to consult with who had done it before, other than like Kay Redfield Jamison's book, and her experience was bipolar disorder. And it was formational for me, what it was like to be out as a psychiatric faculty with her own bipolar.
Yes, actually, and for me too, there's another woman that was very inspirational to me. Actually being able to even find the opportunity to write that APA article was Catherine Ponte, another woman who wrote Mental Illness Recovery Insights, and she is now part of the faculty at Yale, but she's out with her lived experience of bipolar, who is a super inspiration to me in starting the process of like writing more articles and things. Awesome. You know, so similar experiences. When there's not a lot of resources, it's nice to find an inspiration out there.
What you said that I think that was so important to me is like, kind of like, what's your why? What's your motivation? What do you hope to? And I think for a lot of us, you know, it is congruence and this, and, you know, all the beautiful healing things that we both love. So that's a given. Yet I think professionally, the motivation for me, and this is where we make it a little mean. So we're going to have 9, take a nap.
Just don't scare my parts.
Yeah, we'll be as diplomatic as possible. But essentially it's, you know, Adrienne, we sat through so many trainings on dissociation over the years and got either bored, pissed off, enraged, frustrated, feeling like you're making this so much harder than it needs to be. And I don't think you would really even know what to do if someone like me came in your office. And, you know, as we'd sit through a lot of those trainings, several of our peers who knew, or our colleagues who knew, would say, well, Jane, when are you going to do a training on dissociation? And my short answer was, I can't go up there and be one more person who talks in code, or be one more person who, you know, just cites study after study, or this after that or that. Like, I knew I couldn't really train on this until I was able to be the level of candid that I am now. And so I think somewhere deep inside we knew it had to happen. It was just a matter of trusting the timing and how it would all unflow.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. You know, I think the why, the why for me was I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I do EMDR, and the incongruence, it just didn't sit well. And I thought, well, if I'm a licensed psychologist that lives with this, maybe, just maybe, there's an opportunity to create change and to do it differently. Now, I also didn't know how this was all going to unfold, and it was going to actually lead to me wanting to do more with my lived experience that just doesn't seem like it fits in the clinical world. And so I don't necessarily say that I'm feeling pushed out, because it is my choice, but I don't feel like I fit. I don't know that I ever really have, but now that I'm embracing like all of me and all of my parts and my life experiences, I'm just like, and it's not that I chose the wrong profession.
Right.
That's not true, because I've so much enjoyed being a therapist, and I've served so many beautiful people over the years. It's just different now. And if I can't be in a global community, my DID community, I love with my whole heart, but if I can't be in this more global community around mental health and feel like I fit, why would I stay?
Right. We appreciate you so much, sister. So again, what else do we need to talk about in terms of solutions? Like what do we want to see happen here? Maybe dream big, post McLean video. Where do we go here?
Dream big. I'm good at that.
Yeah.
I like to dream big. That's been really fun, especially when all the parts start dreaming for me. I want to see more authentic conversations. We have to get out of this rigidity of a box and very, very specific, rigid guidelines, right? Yes, absolutely. We need boundaries with clients. We need boundaries with all things in life. But, we need more, I don't know, I want to hear more talking about all of the alternative treatments that have helped me that aren't necessarily always supported in the mental health field, but things like breath work and movement and yoga and Reiki and energy healing, like all of the things that have helped me heal. And if it would have only been one way with these treatment guidelines and specific psychotherapy, I think I would have never gotten to this place in my healing. And the reality is there are some people that will never step foot in a therapy office and they are still healing, living, thriving, doing their thing, finding their way, finding their voice. And I don't know. I'm not, again, I haven't wrapped my mind around everything. I'm still shocked sometimes by the things that I hear. And I don't know what the solution is, but I do think we need, like I was thinking about, so the poem I'm going to share later when we're feeling called is The Rainbow Represents. Because when I think about a bridge, I think about a rainbow, a beautiful rainbow between, in a dreaming big world, it's the field comes to the table, the bigger entities at B, right? And the lived experience, the DID community comes to the table, and we all figure out a way to live harmoniously while we can all be heard, where the research is respected, where the professionals doing the research are respected. Maybe they listen to us, maybe they get different ideas for different types of research, right? And I'm grateful for the research field, because again, I don't do that. I don't want to do it. I don't always understand all of the statistics. Like that's a weakness of mine. That's why I got a PsyD.
Yeah.
But but all of it, like I just want the bridge. I want the public, the providers, and the community to hash it out in a healthy way, like conflict resolution, so that all parties are heard and we can come up with a new path forward. That's my dreaming big.
And I want that too. I think my one slightly cynical caveat I want to voice is feeling like if I am going to sit down with the researchers and the establishment about my lived experience, as somebody who, quite frankly, sees myself as a survivor of that world of academia and institutionalism, that they will go in not seeing us as little crazy girls who are just craving for attention, but that we are professional women who really have something to offer.
Yeah.
And
I'm just going to challenge that, because that sounds like an internalized shame statement right there. I just won't even allow my brain to go there, that they would possibly think that I'm this crazy little girl with big dreams. And if they want to think that, great for them. they're missing an opportunity. They're missing a bigger opportunity to help the field and our
Agreed.
clients and future clients.
Agreed.
But I hear you.
Agreed. So I will go positive there, because you know the realistic thing is it's hard to see those folks as my allies. It's hard to see them as someone I'd want to sit down with.
Yeah.
But part of the spiritual solution here, because I'm glad you went there with, you know, there's other things besides therapy, right?
Yeah.
That help
Yes.
people. And
thank God for that.
And like in Dissociation Made Simple, I'm grateful we were able to interview like 4 shamans for that book too, to share
cool.
non-Western perspectives on
love it.
A strategy that really helped me get sober when I went to get sober, it's a 12-step strategy of you pray for the person or thing that you resent. And I have found myself these last several nights praying for Matthew Robinson and praying for some ISSTD people and praying for a few other people whose words have hurt us. And, you know, hopefully that will bring me some peace to be able to dialogue if they're genuine about dialoguing. But it's hard. But I think, you know, where I want to kind of end my hope tonight is set the intention that we can have this great bridge building experience. and yeah, like one of the users is saying here on the live cast, there should be no discussion without DID peeps. I love that we've been this hashtag more lately, nothing about us without us. And I think, you know, honestly, Adrienne, yes, the whole community needs to be heard.
Yeah.
And
big time.
The last thing I want to speak to, since I know, you know, TikTok and social media has been such a big part of it.
I would love to be on TikTok, but it terrifies me. I don't know why. TikTok for me is different than Instagram. And I think it's because I worry I'm going to get bullied over there. To be fair, just honest, you know?
Yes, I was there. And here was my TikTok journey, because a lot of, you know, I've gone on TikTok like in about the last 6 months since, you know, the book came out, and a lot of my TikToks make it on here to Instagram. And yeah, part of my initial, because, you know, I read some of the early pop culture articles that were out there about the DID rise on TikTok, and a lot of my friends would come to me and say, my clinical friends, like, now all these kids think they have DID because of TikTok. And my answer back is, well, explore what your kids are relating to in the videos. Like, don't make a big deal about it. Like, because obviously there's something they're seeing, they're connecting to in the videos. And you know, Adrienne, that I have a natural concern whenever the more entertaining parts of our condition are emphasized over the realistic parts, but that's an issue in all media. And so one of the reasons I decided to go on to TikTok was citing the words of our dear friend, Jamie Pollock, who I know we both admire, the founder of An Infinite Mind. When I interviewed her for Dissociation Made Simple, she said, people would be surprised how routine my life really is. Like, now that I've had a state of healing and some, you know, recovery and cohesion, like, yeah. And so, you know, part of why I went on TikTok is to show that, you know, there can be a professional with with dissociative identities. And yeah, because my technical diagnosis is OSDD1, but I have used the identifier dissociative identities because we are a dissociative system. And you know, I like dropping the D from disorder personally when that feels, you know, organic. And, you know, as somebody who had, you know, who has some filmmaking interests and is an expressive artist, I have found, and this is where I can really speak out for people like Pixie and the A System and a lot of folks who are exploited. I find being on TikTok so healing.
And I just want to pause for a second and just say my heart really goes out to the systems whose content was taken and misused. And I don't even have the words for my anger and disgust for that. Because I know that if that had happened to me, I would not be okay right now. And so I just, again, I'm at a loss for words, and I want those systems to know I see them. And I am so sorry for that. Absolutely not okay what happened. So
thank you for punctuating that. Why I get them a lot more now than I did 6 months ago even. I have found it so cathartic, so therapeutic to make short videos about my experience. a clinical professional who's dealt with this. The one TikTok I did about taking the mid, I took it and I showed it to my therapist, and I think this has been more therapeutic for me than anything, was like putting the
well, I do my Instagram reels, and I try to put my clinical data and my lived experience that captures my experience, and I try to support it also with some teaching and educating. And I'm a big person about humor, and it's my platform, and I'm expressing myself while also providing education to the community. And no one in this world has any right to come into somebody else's platform or space. It's like coming into somebody's home and saying, this isn't real. You're not this. Like, what is that? I'm not allowing people to come into my house and tell me what my reality is and what isn't. So we shouldn't be doing it to other people on social media. That's ridiculous. And we are all humans that there are lots of different issues with social media. But to target people and their experiences is not okay. As adults, we need to make discernment about who we would like to follow, what we would like to learn, right? And I understand there are children of this world that we need to protect. But I would only be responsible for my own children, and I don't have them. And then just, globally, yes, I'm really big on not exploiting children. I mean, that's huge, right? But we shouldn't be exploiting adults either. And we certainly, as well, should not be exploiting anybody with any type of condition. Like, the whole thing has just been very exploitive, and it's really just heartbreaking. And any one of us have every right to use our platforms for whatever that might be, to express ourselves in whatever way in which we choose.
Amen. We love you, and we want to hear one of your poems if it's
Well, yes. Did you want to read anything from Dissociation Made Simple? Did you have any? Or did you want to? Where can people? I think you should mention where people can find your book and all that.
I think I've shared a lot of the insights from it, so I don't necessarily need to do a reading, especially because the version that I have at my desk is the version that's my old copy.
Oh, yay! Wait! You have a name for that. It's like Expressive Arts Journal.
Yes. It's an expressive arts journal, and even Dr. Adrian signed it at the.
Didn't I put my Ultracology sticker in there? I believe I did.
Symbol. So yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have a really clear passage to read. I just appreciate that we've had the opportunity in this space to talk a little bit about our work. And why I am so happy with this book is we talked to 61 people, 19 folks with DID, an additional 9 or 10 who have other dissociative disorders, and a lot of people with other mental health or physical health struggles who wanted to speak about their experiences of dissociation. And, as a phenomenologist in my training, which is a qualitative researcher that values the study of lived experience as something that can't be quantitated or quantified. There, we were losing our words. It just meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to me. When I talk about the book, want to shout out Shana Keels, who's my publisher at North Atlantic Books, because she saw the value in putting like this out when others didn't. So thank you, Adrian, for your support of me, of us, of Dr. Jamie and Jamie.
Same. I mean, that's why we're in community together, right? And do you want me to close with a poem? Do you have any final messages of hope just a message to the community around shame, like a message of hope for them? Because there's a lot, you and I both know, there's just a lot of people struggling out there right now that are really hurting from this experience. And that makes sense, and that is valid. All feelings around this experience have been valid. And I always like to leave people with a message of hope. So before I read the poem, is there any final thoughts you want to say? All of you?
Yeah, let's see here. And I go back to shame is the lie that someone told you about yourself is the very definition of shame, right? And so what's the message of hope? What's the cure? What's the antidote to shame as lie is truth. So lean into the truth of your inner knowing.
So good.
And may that truth be your comfort during this time and in the road ahead.
Beautiful. I love that. I just got goosebumps again. Thank you for that. Even for me in my system, I needed to hear that too. Thank you. So I will close with one of the parts poems from One Soul, Multiple Expressions, Poems by the Parts, by me, a multi-layered human living with dissociative identities. I embrace them fully. I wanted to read Rainbow Represents because I just get a sense of this bridge that I do want to believe that it's possible. Rainbow represents community, connection, faith, hope, love, trust, safety, resilience, beauty, and belonging. So thank you, Dr. Jamie, all, plus sign and et al.
And not to break the beautiful mood of this, but to let anybody know who's here in real time, Dr. Adrienne and I will be sharing the replay of this, and I'm going to do my best to get it onto YouTube. And then I could put that on Twitter, just at Jamie Marich, because I know a lot of you, it's easier to share a YouTube clip.
Sure.
If you did want to share this conversation with other folks. Adrienne, thank you for having the conversation with us.
Awesome. Thank you for braving the way, and may we all continue to brave the way in our own unique ways. Have a lovely evening. Thank you to all who have joined us.